Some people believe that AI tools should be used as a tool to make teachers' lives easier by automating mundane tasks such as gradebook updates or transcript generation. Others argue that AI should be used as a strategy, meaning it should replace part of the teaching process to track students' progress or identify areas where they need extra help. Let's see what our panelists have to say. I'd like to request the moderator, Michael Connor, CEO and founder of Agile Evolutionary Group Corp, to take us through the discussion on AI as a tool or a strategy in education.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I am Dr. Michael Connor, currently right now the CEO and founder of the Agile Evolutionary Group. I also served as superintendent of schools, and yes, it was during the COVID years, I should say. And then I also served as the chief academic officer, assistant superintendent of teaching and learning, and then the traditional trajectory of a fourth grade teacher, literacy curriculum specialist, as well as assistant principal. So I served in all the capacities in education, and now have my own organization focused around education transformation as well as serial disruption in our field. So I am absolutely honored to be joined by this esteemed panel. We're going to be talking about classroom instruction as well as how we integrate AI into our learning organizations. But before we get into that, I want to have each of our panelists introduce themselves.
My name is Amr Mohsen. I'm the co-founder and chairman and CEO of Hope Artificial Intelligence, Inc. Hope AI is an aggressive and ambitious project to bring online education to inmates while they're still in prison, in order to reach the 2.5 million inmates incarcerated. And I'll tell you some more about some of the great success we've seen. It utilizes a unique cloud-based secure education platform augmented with artificial intelligence in order to provide adaptive learning for inmates in prison and help them get certificates when they are released, be able to get well-paying jobs and not go back to prison.
Thank you, Doc.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dennis Kapush, and I'd like to thank everyone that organizes today for bringing this diverse group of educators, healthcare specialists, marketers, lawyers, moneymakers, all of us. And it's my honor and pleasure to be here on the same stage and sharing this stage together with an amazing industry leaders and talking about this an important topic about AI in education. And a little bit about myself. My background lays in higher education, and throughout my life, I was involved in both creating brands to creating products in education to promoting it, selling it, and really being passionate about education because it changes people's lives, and it changed my life. So I'm excited to be here. And AI is something that is right here and right now. There are some beliefs that we might demystify today, some that we might set a direction for. Thank you, everyone. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jiayuan Fang, founder and CEO of Afficient Academy. Afficient Academy develops the AI-powered learning systems for K-12 education and for math and English at this moment. And we sell our product to the consumer side and also provide the solutions to the schools. So use AI technology, and we want to dramatically enhance the learning effectiveness, including the learning efficiency and the quality, and also helps the schools to bring the student up to the grade level and fill the skill gaps and build a solid foundation.
All right. Trust my instincts better next time. All right. Let's try this again. Matthew Kraft, Chief Operating Officer, Mosaic Learning. Let me put this away from my mouth a little bit more. Honored and to be among such extraordinary thought leaders at this conference and on this panel talking about how artificial intelligence is going to advance student learning and student outcomes. We talked before about, in my keynote, about the 4 legs of the stool: artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural networks and data and how they all connect. And so I'm very honored to be here talking about things that make us extraordinary engineers and thought leaders in advancing outcomes in education.
Thank you for that. And we just got to see Mark use his cafeteria voice, as we would say in the world of education. But just to put context for everybody, now we experienced 3 levels of education as we moved out of what I call the post-pandemic era, because the 2022-2023 academic year is the first typical year for students since the 18-19 academic year. So we saw 3 stages: the before COVID stage of education. Then we lived through 3 years of during COVID, which was the 3 years where it was interrupted, it was ambiguous, and then the last year was the reality, which the data that was released per NAEP, which we saw some of the lowest scores since 1980. But now we are in the AC stage of education, which is the stage of being permissionless, but more importantly, we're starting to bring in new vernacular, i.e. machine learning, artificial intelligence, and also AI machines into the education model. But one question I want to ask our panelists today is, do we now, since we're in this AC stage of education, do we see artificial intelligence, machine learning, stuff that was an anomaly in education? Is it a strategy? Is it a tool? Or is it this polarity of both? Let's start with you, Mark. We'll go down.
I think it's a good question. From my perspective, we're in, use baseball as an analogy. I like to sort of use analogies as much as possible to explain things that in many cases are pretty complex as we actually look to the implementation. So from my perspective, looking at baseball as an analogy, we're in the second inning of a 9-inning stretch to really fundamentally change the way that education, in my opinion, is delivered. And if you look at AI as not only a tool and a strategy, a calculator was a tool. AI is actually a different way of thinking about how to advance and present information and then assess the outcome of the student, and where the student is failing to interrupt immediately. In project management, we call it fail fast, right? We need to immediately interrupt where the student is not progressing, assess the progress of the student, and AI is both a tool and a strategy because it's a framework to implement these immediate technologies and emerging technologies to enable student advancement. And so if you look at the next 2 to 4 years, the idea that you would not have artificial intelligence algorithms and the underpinnings that exist there driving student behavior and student assessment is like sort of going back to the old days of the one-room schoolhouse. We're in a new era of school and technology fusion.
Great, thank you.
What I want to say is we need to try our best to incorporate what's there in technology into our learning system. Okay, whatever can help us to enhance learning, we need to bring them in. To enhance the learning effectiveness, to enhance efficiency, and enhance the quality. And I'm in the opinion that no matter those technologies are labeled as AI or not, doesn't matter. What kind of problem you want to solve, and if they help to solve this problem, whatever the technology, whether they are called, it doesn't matter, and bring them in to solve the problem. And we should use this as a strategy to incorporate whatever technology is there to enhance our learnings. And AI can definitely do it, and AI is definitely, I think, the strategy and the tool can effectively help us to make the learning more effective.
For me, as being a strategist at my core and strategizing a lot, so to me, it's kind of both, and it always starts with the issue we're trying to address. And there are different issues in education and different gaps, such as the performance gap, access, experience gap. So we can really start with framing the issue we're trying to solve, and then start thinking about the strategy, how we can deliver and solve that issue. And there is a tool out there. As we mentioned, it's artificial intelligence, it's machine learning, augmented reality. Those are all the different tools or strategies, it's kind of like always debating whether a tool or a strategy, what's the right way to kind of describe it. But it always starts with a problem that we're trying to solve. And then there are tools out there that will help us solve that issue at the most efficient, effective, and affordable way possible. And technology is allowing us to cover all of those points and deliver the best experience possible.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we all agree here that AI and machine learning is a very powerful tool. And it's so powerful that we believe it's a strategy. It's a strategy that's gonna, make the most impact on education. One of the tools that use AI and machine learning, we call it intelligent tutoring system. And this software would be a companion, like a mentor to a learner, and monitoring the progress of the learner and the results of answering the quiz and the test, and directing the learner to material to overcome the deficiencies. This is adaptive learning. This is impactful. It's no longer a linear progressive of material where it may leave some people behind, but this is competency learning. It adapts the learning process to the capability of the learner, and nobody will be left behind. And this is really revolutionary. This is going to have a tremendous impact. And it's also going to lead to the reverse classroom that we all talk about, where the learner doesn't have to be in a classroom in front of a teacher and a whiteboard. The learner could be, going through the material and understanding and identifying where he's stuck. But when he goes to the classroom, it's more efficient. The teacher can address where the learner is being blocked and be able to bring the whole class all the learners in the class according to their capability to a competency level to allow them to succeed. This is a revolution, and it's coming. And it's all depend on how progressive the use of the AI and machine learning in this intelligent tutoring system to assist learner to progress in an adaptive way, in a way that is commensurate with their ability to go through the material. It's no longer a course that take 4 months to be completed. No, one learner could go through it in 1 month. Another learner could take 6 months. It doesn't matter. It's not a linear process. It's a competency process.
Thank you, Dr. Mosier, and a lot of statements that were underscored there, specifically when we talk about this intentional design of the emergent model, right? And this emergent model that is not didactal, but more in the lines multi-adaptive for our learners. But of course, AI is driving this. And when we think about this, and I just want to focus this as a strategy, right? AI as a strategy. And we're starting to see new AI machines out there. What's even more, I think, provocative is the level of the algorithms, the supervised algorithms, the sophistication of that, meaning that we can get to that level of competency and personalization in a much faster manner. But we have an issue. And one of the conundrums that we face is around capacity, acceptance of AI, acceptance of artificial intelligent machines, AI tools in our classrooms, mining the gap between leaders, practitioners, and AI. So as we start talking about this digital operating model as opposed to an analogous business model, i.e. the Jeffersonian model that we've been so used to, how do we now start changing the stems and capacity about AI in our schools so it becomes an entity within the teaching and learning process? We'll start with you, Doc.
I think the key, from my perspective, is to make it transparent. I've been fighting bureaucracy in schools since I was in junior high. And we're working on a system called Lake Washington Online, which became the largest bulletin board system in the country at the time. This, you'll remember, was 14.4 and 28.8 baud modems. You go, and the one thing that I didn't do that very well, but the one thing that for those that were there and for what we did is we were too. I remember speaking, when I was in junior high and high school at school board meetings, really in your face with the school boards, and they didn't get it, right? And so one of the reasons why we built Combobulate, and I talked about that at the keynote here a bit ago at 1:30, was to make the entire ecosystem there. And so from an instructor perspective, from a school board perspective, from a training director perspective, they're just getting information out of the system. They're getting reports, they're getting student information, they're getting student assessments, they're getting scorms, they're getting all of this stuff that's being in there, and they don't know that there's an underpinning AI model that's being used that's now built an algorithm to say, okay, this student has a 91% chance of finishing, this student has a 9% chance of finishing. They're just getting a report that says that. They don't know that there's this big, some scary thing underneath the hood that's doing that. And so from my perspective, for artificial intelligence and machine learning and neural networks and these models being trained to become widely accepted, it needs to be like a GPS in my car, where I just turn the car on, put the destination in, and I really don't care what's going on underneath the hood. That's the acceptance. It needs to not be in your face in a school board level. It needs to be fully accepted, implemented, and ubiquitous to where it doesn't matter. The system is there, and that's it.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of academic development, academic research, and the AI learning, I think, can go as early as 1980s, and we see this morning as knowledge space and some other things, and I think there's a lot of valuable information, a lot of research there. So I think for individual, the company would develop the product, and it's important to study those things, but also need to see whether you can really absorb them, whether it makes sense to your application or not. And so in our scheme, and we developed mainly is the homemade scheme, and we look at the research papers, and we look at what the objective try to reach, and we say we developed our own. So somebody ask us what AI algorithm you are using. We tell them we're using our own. We develop, we apply our own patterns, and we study them, and we find out what makes sense to us, and what we can effectively absorb them, and make our objective met. And we are constantly refining our scheme as well. We're not just following other people's. I think following other people, get to know other people's development, that's important. But you need to, just our own algorithm, we are constantly refining them, constantly improve them, and we don't have a name for that. And so it's our own AI algorithm, and we just develop and polish and improve ourselves.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. It was a really good point, and I wanted to add and talk about the generations. So we have our exciting Gen Z and Alpha, and they grew up in the era of the technology. So it's a second nature for them, and the expectation of today's consumer behavior is they're kind of expecting it to be a normal environment for them to be immersed in the technology and utilize technology to educate themselves better. So I think that with the help of AI and machine learning, educators and the whole education system would be able to personalize education agenda for each individual depending on the assessment of their strengths and weaknesses, which is going to make their learning experience so much more seamless and more effective. For example, if we take an example, let's say there's a course in digital marketing, which I do, and everybody comes from different backgrounds. Just like today, we have this amazing conference, and there are folks from healthcare, from the law industry, from marketing, education, and we got to take a personalized approach to creating digital marketing strategies for each of the industries because they're different. And so let's take an example that somebody wants to learn digital marketing, and they want to be specialized in healthcare. So for them, going through fundamentals is important. But then if they're going to concentrate on learning digital marketing specifically in law industry, they're going to be so much more successful throughout the whole journey. So the point is that AI and machine learning would be able to help both faculty, academia, as well as students create better leaders, extraordinary leaders at the younger age, just like we see today for the Gen Z and Alpha. It's incredible how successful they are at a very young age. And big advantage of that is the technology. It's very exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. Send this home on this, Doc.
Okay. Well, I'm an engineer by training. Yeah, I have a PhD in electronic engineering and physics from Caltech, and most of my career has been in the semiconductor industry and starting companies, taking public, and so on. And I really see that we are in early phase of figuring out how to use AI and machine learning in education. And it's in infancy. And just to give you an idea of how powerful technologies have evolved in our society, think back of the automotive engine when it was invented. What did they do with it? They just took the regular horse cart, removed the horse, and put in an engine instead. And several generations of changing the shape of the car with the motor engine evolved until it became a lot more adaptive to the power of the automotive engine. And same thing is happening with the AI in transportation. What are we doing with it? We're just removing the steering wheel. However, its impact is a lot more profound than this. It's going to affect transportation. You may not need to own a car. You can just call a car on your app, and it shows up at your front door and takes you where you want. And then when you want to get back, you just call another car. There's many profound impact that AI and machine learning is having in many aspects of our life. What we see in education is really in its infancy. So we think now that an intelligent tutoring system is going to help us be more efficient. I think it's going to have a lot more profound effect on education because people will be able to do continuous learning, will be able to have this intelligent tutoring system to guide them. They don't need to go to a teacher or a subject matter expert unless they are stuck. And it's going to accelerate the learning. It will also will not leave anybody behind. Anybody will be able to progress according to his capability. It is revolutionary. Fasten your seatbelt.
We got to fasten our seatbelts here. But this next question is the panel needs to fasten their seatbelts regarding this because we've been talking about a lot of the technical aspects of artificial intelligence, whether it be around data engineering, big data in order to operate, or we should say optimize artificial intelligence in our classrooms. We're talking about machine learning and neural networks were something that was never, ever underpinned in the same sentence with education. But now I'm gonna push collective cognitive rigor. We've been talking about a lot of technical aspects of artificial intelligence, but now we need to really get to the root cause, right? We're most engineers up here, but I'm bringing the superintendent lens. AI and equity. We know that Generation Alpha and Generation Z, 48 to 50% of those students are Black and brown, right? And we know we have a traditional legacy model in education. So now, Doc, and I'm gonna put the pressure on you, and we're gonna start it down here. I should start with Mark, but we're gonna start it with you, Doc, is that how do we leverage, or what does equity look like with artificial intelligence when our demographics is rapidly changing, social inclusion needs to occur? Doc, you've been articulating and really been pushing for this level of deep personalization with the AI. But how do we leverage or create this parallelization of AI and equity in our schools, in our classrooms?
Great question. And as a matter of fact, AI and machine learning in education is going to be a great lever in achieving equity. Minorities, underserved population will be able to access learning and advance according to their capability and find their area where they're mostly have the proper talent for and advancing it in a more transparent way because of the adaptive nature of education that AI is going to be able to provide. There has been studies made, for example, using some of the early tools of artificial intelligence, Alex from McGrail, in several schools in Southern California, and it showed that minority population that were in the 30 to 50% success rate by using some of these early tools, that advanced to be in the 70, 80%, similar to the other better served students. So it is a powerful level that's going to help bring equity to underserved population. As a matter of fact, the reason we are focusing on education of inmates in prison is it's an underserved population. They spend years, whether they're sentenced 5, 10, 15 years, really not being able to get any level of education. Watching TV and playing games, and the whole technology is passing them by. And when they get released, in 2 to 3 years, the majority of them are back in prison because they cannot keep up with the advances of technology. And this recidivism rate in our country is a dubious distinction that we have. It's the highest in the world, higher than even the most autocratic countries. And with AI and machine learning, by having it available to inmates in prison who have little access to resources, it will help them be able to learn digital technology. Hope AI is bringing to those inmates digital courses, from companies such as Facebook, Cisco, Amazon, Google, in order that in less than a year, they can complete those courses, get a certificate in their hand, and by using machine learning and AI, they can advance in those courses according to their capabilities. It's adaptive to their skills. And when they get out, they have a certificate in their hand. They will apply to a job to those companies or companies who use their tools, and they can have a better confidence of having a well-paying jobs and not go back to prison. It's an impact on not only on those inmates, their families, the communities, and the whole country.
Thank you, Dr. Mohsen.
I'd like to set up a context of my background. So I worked at ASA College as a director of digital marketing, and we served underserved minority groups of African American, Latin communities, immigrants in New York City. And in my current role, I work at the Columbia Business School as a digital strategist, and that's a whole different population of the most brilliant, rich people in the world. And so, to my point, I think there are 2 or 3 different pillars that we can approach the equality and access to the new technology. It should start, in my opinion, it should start with the government and passing the legislators that would allow grants to institutions and allowing them to get access to the new technology and being able to incorporate it in their educational work environment. And then also, when we look at the education institutions across the United States or the entire world, we could see that the most funded, the most expensive universities are the ones who are getting the most innovative technologies. They're the most innovative at providing new learning experiences. However, when we look at the population of underserved communities, we might ask question, so where do they go to get their education? And it's usually local colleges, affordable, that will help them just get through the education process and get their bachelor's or master's degree or associate degree, you name it. And when we look at the adoption of the new technologies, the same thing. We see it across the most funded educational institutions. So my point is that if Department of Education would be open to provide grants to different levels of institutions and primarily focusing on the ones that serve underserved communities, we would be able to overcome this issue and everybody would have access to the latest technology and advance across all the institutions in the world.
Thank you.
I think I cannot agree with your point more. Okay. And I think the technologies are there, and the product are there, and some schools have funding, some schools may not.
Right.
Some institutions are not. So I think the government and should encourage the schools and provide the adequate funding for the schools adopt the technologies to support individualized learning, to support the personalized learning to fill the skill gaps. And our product do that. And we're eager to put into all the schools. And if the school has adequate funding and these make all the peoples accessible and easily, and so we can bring the benefit to all the schools, all the children in the school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm gonna, if I can, say something a little bit more controversial, but I believe is true. One of the greatest visuals I've seen on LinkedIn in the past couple of weeks is a sort of juxtaposed photograph of the Brandenburg Gate in Germany, circa 1944, with the Nazi flag, and the Brandenburg Gate circa 2022 with the Star of David on it for Hanukkah. And so if you look at sort of, that as a visual, as hard as it is to sort of think through it, I believe that all things heal with time. And I believe that, when I've told my children all the time, I believe that their generation will end institutionalized racism and discrimination. I believe that AI, ML as a tool will help to achieve that in education. If I look at the discrimination that I saw, even I experienced as a child in elementary school and junior high, and others in my class, in my cohort, where 97% of them were Caucasian, does a model care? Does a model care? It does not. Model cares about the outcome. It does not care the color of your skin or your race, period. And so if you look at where we are headed, AI and ML will help to achieve a world equity that we have not seen before, because it's not that the money's not there, it's that it's misappropriated and misspent. I was at lunch with the former superintendent of Baltimore City Schools last week, and she was going over the enormous amount of money that Baltimore City Schools spent, and she said when she got down to the bottom line, they couldn't account for it. Our product, Kabobulate, costs $3.50 on average per user. So if you look at the power of that product to deploy education en masse, again, using modeling that doesn't care, especially in a self-paced environment, about what your demographics are. If everyone, for example, were on Kabobulate, and I'm not advancing this idea, but it would be cool if this were the case, then no one would care in a classroom, again, what race or color, creed you come from, what income demographic you have. And by the way, I spent $4.93 this morning on a cup of coffee, so $3.50 to educate a person per month is not that much to spend. And so I believe that AI and ML, in this context, will help to change and level the world in an equity way that we have never experienced before in our lifetime, and the change in society will be transformational.
Thank you for that. And two key themes that I heard from everyone's answer is around access and opportunity, right? And yes, when you're developing standard models or statistical models that we're looking at schools in an algorithmic way, where now students are engaging in these tools, but can we achieve equity, right? Now let's think about this on the back end, where we're talking about AI tools. We're talking about AI machines, the development of those algorithms, right? Even though the standardization or the front-end experience, even though the AI might not see color, might not see race, might not see ethnicity, gender, but we got to have people, or I should say data engineers, data scientists, to be able to develop those programs through algorithms. But remember, each individual has a certain bias. So as engineers, I want everybody to put their engineer hat on, okay? How can we inform solution providers, partners, to develop algorithms without intended biases? I know that is a huge conundrum that we're facing within the computer science world, biases embedded within algorithms, where now, if you type up a certain name, you might get prison or prisons or, you know, the stereotypes we see. But now, since it's going to be in education, I know we only got about roughly 5 minutes. We could have talked about 5 hours for that. But what can we do as a strategy or to give our partners strategies to build algorithms without biases? Who wants to take that one? You got to be intentional, you got to be bold, and you got to be unapologetic with your answer. And that's the name of my book. That's why I said that. But go ahead, you can take it, Mark.
Yeah, I'm not going to apologize for wanting to end racism in the world. So 100%. Look, there's two tenets to this problem. The first one is that we need more engineers. And so, for example, my last company, we did lots of sponsorships for code.org and things like that. It's very important that in order to decrease the bias, that we change the gender gap. We focus on serving underprivileged communities through volunteering, through hours of code, and all the things, and leveling the playing field in engineering schools, so that it, again, doesn't matter that we've got a level playing field. It doesn't matter what your background is, that you can achieve a computer science degree and you can go and use that degree to create the algorithms of the future. And so that's problem number one, or issue number one. The second one is we look at interoperability, right? And so we look at some of the early tools to achieve interoperability, whether it's SQL or XML, and we look to the future of sort of semantic level interoperability. It's all about creating exchanges that allow for the free exchanges of data. I talked about blockchain and sort of this learning chain concept in my keynote, but it's all about creating a hugely interoperable platform that we can all sort of attach to, that at the end of the day is owned by the learner, that enables data from various sources to combine to create new models that, again, the more data you have, the less statistical bias you have in the model, therefore the more reliable it is.
We had this conversation when we were talking yesterday at, I believe it was breakfast, right? Where we were talking about this, where we've taken huge steps within the education model, because now we're talking about interoperability. Before COVID, interoperability was very, very, very foreign to education. But now those are the type of advances that we're making, which is absolutely good.
So we have two products. One is the math and one is English. So for the math product, I don't think we have paid particular attention or aware that the ethnic or racial factors in the programming or the content selection. So we pay very close attention to the language arts, the selection of the passages, and especially it's related to the history. It relates to that. So we are very sensitive and very careful on that. And for some subject, I think our content team and the software team, probably there's something which we do not aware of, still not yet. And I myself may not aware which one will be sensitive, which one will be not. We are learning that. If we experience that, we are eager to learn and make the adequate adjustment. But in the language arts program, we do very careful on those aspects. Yeah.
And I'm glad that we're having discussions and conversations where we could intentionally talk about these algorithms where we're trying to eliminate biases. Before, this wasn't even a standard conversation in the computer science world.
Yeah, I think the programmers, the engineers, I don't think for the content part, of course, but the learning program, learning flow, and I don't think, to a large extent, that's not
correct.
Is not a factor in their design.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
we have about a couple of minutes, so I'm going to be short and to the point. To
That's
me,
the Columbia footnotes, right?
exactly. All right, so straight to the point. I think providing access to data sets in a holistic way and centralized would allow any developers to train models properly on certain issues. So if I know that data is new currency of the world, and everybody sells it and repurposes it and do any kinds of things. So making this data sets available for certain issues that we're trying to address, and if engineers would have access to any amounts of data on any different issues, including all underserved communities and specific segments that you want to work on, I think that would make a huge difference in innovation among younger population of students and this brilliant new engineers, as well as established companies and somebody who has been in the field for a long, long time. So let's give access to engineers to data so they can train models properly.
Segmented analyses, sentiment analyses as well, that's culturally sensitive. Wow, absolutely. Doc, bring us home, Doc.
Okay, well, I just want to stress the fact that the driving force for this revolutionary computing technology, what we call it now artificial intelligence, machine learning, because it mimics our brain in its processing architecture, is the semiconductor industry. It's almost $500 billion in market size. It will exceed $1 trillion by 2030, and it is a driving force. We're not building chips down into a couple of nanometer dimensions, almost the size of an atom. And the fact that we can, it's being scaled down and it increases the processing power, double it almost every year and a half, and reduce the cost, also every year by 30%. This is what enabled AI and machine learning. The concept of AI and machine learning are old. They existed around over 30, 40 years ago, but they became viable with the increased processing power enabled by the semiconductor industry. Now, the important thing is that new architecture are being developed in order to match more the applications. And this new architecture will enable software languages that are easier to program and be able to have, most people develop their own algorithms with this easier to use software tools. So we have to be open-minded. We have to let the new generation figure out how to apply this powerful technology to change education, to change how people can reach it and advance their skills and achieve their goals in life.
And as we conclude this conversation, there are a lot of different things that resonated with me, specifically when we talk about SQL, structured query language in education. Wow, I never thought I'd hear SQL in education, but more importantly, bringing big data in this inexactitude manner, where now we're bringing data that we've never brought together before to develop models and question the current infrastructure and structures and systems that we have. So please, as we start to integrate artificial intelligence, I'm gonna reference back to my book title, you have to be intentional, you have to be bold, and you have to be unapologetic. And yes, you can get it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble as well. But I wanna say thank you to our panelists, and thank you everybody for your participation.